champion. Welcome, Danny Batten.
Fucking number one. You win.
Hey guys, I'm Si. Welcome to A.C.E Podcast Nation, the home of the Danny Batten Fight Show. This is episode number 83, and tonight we'll be talking all the latest news from MMA, boxing, plus, of course, another interview with a top-level fighter from the world of combat sports. And we're live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. A.C.E Podcast Nation, home to many a great show and series featuring top guests, expert analysts, and more. Do give us a follow on social media. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. That is the most direct way to support us at the moment. And, of course, you can find links to everything in the description. And you can get the audio versions at your favorite podcast platform. Just search A.C.E Podcast Nation, and there's over 460-odd shows on all sorts of stuff. But joining me, as ever, first and foremost, former Cage Warriors champion and, of course, legend of the British MMA scene. It is Mr. Daniel Batten. How are you, mate?
I'm good, son. It's legend of the world, by the way. Just saying.
I got to bring you down, mate. Got to taper your ego, otherwise you get a bit big-headed. But
there's no problem, son. You taper me down, I'll just put myself right back up.
Take you down. But I got to take your ego down because I don't think I'd be able to take you down in a fight, you see. So I got to do something. You might have to shut your curtains, mate, in a minute, but we'll see how it goes.
Okay, no problem.
You're starting to look like just a shape, but we'll see.
Yeah, what I'm gonna do is move off to the side.
Right, buddy. But joining us tonight is one of the hottest prospects in British MMA. Already fought on Cage Warriors Academy show. He has an unblemished professional record at 1-0, and is ready to take over MMA. It is MMA Bantamweight Jack Eglin. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. Yourself? How is it?
All good, mate. All good. Looking forward to having a chat with you, mate. We've been blessed. We have with lots of really cool guests. Have all different experience levels. Some which already made it, some which are on their way, some which are just starting out, and then of course you've got some of the legends of the game who've long since retired. But I always like having a chat with all these different people. Now you get a different feel for what's got them into stuff and how they've got to where they are. And I guess that's where we usually will start. Is like, how did you get into MMA and combat sports and that? Like, how old are you now?
I'm 21.
21. So you're still relatively young. Like, how very young compared to myself and Danny, man. We're old men. Like, how old were you when you started, and how did you get into it?
What, just like
MMA and combat sports, yeah.
I started kickboxing when I was 9. I was like 8 or 9. And then I started MMA like when I year 9 in school, so like 13, 14. Like I started saying I was gonna. I'd been kickboxing and stuff, and then I'd seen someone from my gym.
Look, you just cut out a bit there, mate.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
So one of my coaches now, he got into the UFC.
All right.
So in my eyes, I could see someone from my gym was going and like doing it and was able to make it to the highest level. So, and that was when I was like 13, 14. So I thought, hold on, I want to do this. Like, this is what I love the most. I hated school. I hated anything. Like, I wasn't into none of that. Like, it wasn't for me. I hated it. And it was either like do the fighting, and I loved it. And I thought I'm young enough now to where if I just put all my eggs in one basket and really dedicate myself, train hard, I could take this as far as I want to. If I've got the right people around me, I can get the right connections there. Just let's see how far I can take it, because I hated school. I didn't want to do anything like that. It just really, I hated it all. So if it wasn't for fighting, really, I don't know. Yeah.
So like, were you any good at any other sports or anything like which sort of took your fancy?
When I was younger, I loved football, like any young lad did. I've always loved football. I was half decent and stuff, but I don't know, other things distracted me, like going out with my mates, just doing all not the right things to do. And just not doing a lot, and I end up hating football, and it just really wasn't for me. I've always had a bit of a temper as well, which didn't help. Like fighting just come naturally, really. In football, I just get too aggressive and too competitive, and in the end, it would be to my detriment. And I just fell out of love with football through just that and other stuff. So, like, I don't know, like fighting for me was just, I loved it. I don't know, something just gravitated me towards fighting. I don't know what it was. It was like that Jorge Masvidal says it. Like when he was in like a gym, he felt like that was his like safe zone. Like felt like home for me. Being in a gym, I feel like nothing else matters, if that makes sense. So I always gravitated towards that, and I just love training. So yeah, really, that's how I got into MMA, stuff like that.
Top stuff. So when for you, like, was it like as soon as you sort of decided that you're going to do it, was that when you decided that you wanted to go and do it and turn pro and turn it into a career, or was there just a point? Say again, mate. Sorry.
No. When I first had my first amateur fight in MMA, I knew I wanted to be a professional fighter. Before that, I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So even all through my amateur career, I knew like this was what I was going to do, but it was just making the necessary moves and getting the right experience and stuff like that, having a game plan really, and just sticking to it and just not really trying to stay on the path really. Do you know what I mean? Like not straying off, just trying to keep doing me. Just keep working, and then I'll get there, sort of thing. That's how I've always looked at it.
And like, Danny, with like Jack's mentioned there, like he was quite aggressive, which caused him problems in football, and he was, he loved doing martial arts and loved fighting. Like, that's when, if you've got good coaches at those young ages, you can, I'm guessing, channel that into something positive. Because let's be honest, like there's millions of kids around the UK who might be too aggressive when they're playing football or playing rugby or whatever it may be. And if they haven't got the right people around them, whether it's coaches or friends or whatever, like it can cause issues, and you can end up going down a completely different path. Like, how big a role can a coach play in a kid's life or a teenager's life at that point?
Yeah, I think it's really, really important. I mean, you can get good coaches, but then you can get those special coaches. And when I say, what like special coach and a coach, yeah. But like, to me, a special coach is someone that actually takes real interest and care about what's happening in the entirety of that potential fighter, that student's life. So I've got one lad that, I won't say names, but one of the lads that competed at the weekend. Very, very similar to Jack in many ways. He's 17, 18 now, but had a lot of trouble going through school. I had the school's contacts and his carers in contact with me at all times. And together with them, we helped this young lad pull through and steer him towards a career that we felt would suit and help him heal from the difficulties he was having in his life, such as the temper thing that Jack said he's displayed. I just think the whole combat sport, regardless of whether it's just MMA or not, boxing or any of the combat sports, even jiu-jitsu, don't have to be the striking formats. I think it's great because there is an element of team in regards to preparation, but it's the individual that's going there really putting it all out to play. And I think that's where sort of Jack sits. Some people are team players, but the MMA is about team and its prep, but ultimately it's about the one-on-one expression when you're in there. But going back to point, the coach plays a really, really important role. If you get hold of the wrong type of coach, he might try and steer Jack's anger, as an example, and try to make that his main playoff for success. And that just will not work. It will not cut it. I think, doing the MMA is about, of course, having, that chip on your shoulder steered in the right direction of passion. Because Jack will know, being angry at someone and venting your anger in an MMA match is not going to get you a win. It just doesn't work like that. You've got to control and you got to put that temper into passion with the skill set that you've got and try and find a way to push towards the victory in that way. So, I think
you got to use. I feel like you got to use it to drive you in training. Like use that anger to
Yeah.
drive you. But when you get in there, you got to cool, calm, collect. Like you got to be on
That's
point.
it.
There's no emotion. No emotion.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah.
How difficult is that though, Jack? Like I can only equate it to my own experiences, but like when I get frustrated or angry, particularly when I was younger, it's very difficult to control your emotions. So like, does that where the martial arts side of things and combat sport, like the training and the preparation to that, does that take a bit of getting used to control your emotions, like when you're really young?
Yeah, definitely. Like when I was younger, even in the gym, like I used to flip out on the mat. I was that kid where I was so young, I'd be training with adults, but I'd expect I'd get so frustrated with myself. I'd have to leave, get off the mat. So I'd be like crying, like I'd go punch things and that, and I'd get so frustrated with myself. But just I don't know, as I've gotten older and maturing and just like realizing it's not that, like I used to take every time I lost. I'm so competitive. Every time I'd get tapped in training, I'd flip out. I'd go mental. Like that's just the fighter in me. I'd hate it. Like I hate. No one likes to lose in it, but I just take it extra to heart. So when I was a kid, I'd be training like I don't know. I've got to a point where like if you're not in training anyway, if you're not getting submitted, you're not in the right place. Like you need to be training with top level guys where you should be getting submitted. Because you guys there to show you, shit, that was wrong. Don't do that again. If you're constantly just getting over on people, you're not in the right place. So as I've gotten up, maturing, like I'm learning, like it happens. You get submitted onto the next. Like don't think about it. Like that's happened. Onto the next one. Just keep pushing. Don't worry about that. That's happened though. Like I don't know. Like the martial art, the fighting definitely helped, but just as I'm getting older and you don't know, you just mature, and surround yourself with the right people. You'll be in the right, like just mentally, you'll be in because when you're in the gym, you're surrounding yourself with people who are motivated and just better people. It's going to help, regardless.
Yeah, and like the other thing as well is I think you learn more from, and I would put this into literally any and every walk of life. You learn more from losing or failing than you do from winning. And if you are just particularly in sports, like if you're in a football team and your team just wins 10-0 every week, you never get better, or whatever, like rugby, fighting, whatever. Like you learn more from going up against better people, more experienced people. And when you lose, go on.
Definitely. No. I think that's right. But even when you win, like as long as you're not a person who has like a big ego, you're not gonna you're gonna have your celebration, but then you're gonna go back and look at it and think, right, where did I go wrong then? Even though I won, what could I have done better? Otherwise, you just stagnate. You just stay. You might not get any worse, but you only get the same. And in MMA, you need to constantly be getting better, because there's always new things. So even when you win, I think just because when you lose, you take it more to heart. Like it hurts more. So that's why you learn. Like people probably say, "Oh, I learn more." In reality, you should have the same mindset anyway. After a win, you should be looking right. Oh, where did I go wrong? Because that's all you're gonna ask yourself after when you lose anyway. Fuck, where did I go wrong? I lost. So I don't know. It depends on your mindset, really. For me personally.
Rob Boyle in the live chat asked, "Did you get into lots of scraps in school?"
Maybe. No comment. No comment. No, I'm not. Like, definitely. Like, oh yeah. It could be a lot compared to some people, I guess.
Yeah, I think it depends. I think it's like it depends what school you go to, innit? It's like what some people might class as a lot, other people might not class as a lot. It's completely dependent on where you go and what the school's like, I suppose, and what era. 20 years ago, there's like just something you did every day, but yeah, I don't know, it's a weird thing. What about like idols and like influences on you? Is there any fighters which, particularly when you perhaps first started out?
Not as like I've said this, like, to be fair, I've had this question before, and I've always answered it the same. Like, I had people who, style-wise, I idolised, if that makes sense. But as a person, no. Do you know what I mean? I looked up to people around me and who were like, because I can see them. But as like a fighter, style-wise and stuff, I used to go through stages. I don't know about you, Danny, but I do anyway. Where like I get a bit upset, like not obsessed, but I watch one person for like a month or so. I'm just like, I watch what they do because I'm like, I want to learn that. So I watch them for like a month and I just practice that for a month. And then it's like all of a sudden I'd switch. This was a lot more when I was younger. And then I'd switch. It could be like going from Anderson Silva style to then, right, I like how Floyd Mayweather boxes. I want to work a bit on that. And I don't know, I just got loads of different fighters like who I love, like George St. Pierre, Floyd Mayweather, Terence Crawford, I don't know. And then you'd have like Anderson Silva, all just loads of different guys from boxing, MMA, jiu-jitsu, I don't know, whatever it was. And I try and implement their style into my game. Because if you can implement it into your game, you've got it in your toolbox. And you also know how to defend it too, because you know how it comes, you know how it works. So, I don't know, I just sort of like put all different fight styles in a box, shook it up and hope for the best sort of thing, if that makes sense.
The thing is, if you've got a lot of tools, Danny, in your box, it's like, even if you don't use them every fight, there might be a scenario where you're under pressure or something's happening that you might need those tools and no one's seen you use them before, so no one's prepared for it. It can be something which can get you out of trouble or cause trouble, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree largely on what Jack Eglin was saying, but just to sort of add another thought to the mix, when you're trying to emulate people's styles, it depends what your physicality is as well. So, as an example, say if you're particularly short, in your weight division, and you're trying to emulate someone that is like Anderson Silva, who's reasonably tall, obviously very leggy. He's going to emulate a style that you can't possibly add into your game. And so there is that to add into the factor. For me, Jack, in answer to your question, whether I was like that regards trying to add things into my game because of people's styles, no, I was never in it for that. I was very much into the strategy of things, of course, adding to my skill set regards to toolbox in terms of my techniques. But I was really into into trying to get control using your footwork, getting control in terms of pressing someone back and invading their space by dominating center line. When someone tries to dominate center line because they're bigger than you or got more power, how to draw them forward and cut angles and pepper them, even though you don't ever progress forward. Allow them to come forward and sidestep and sort of like chip them from angles, from counter angles.
You're a strategy guy, aren't you?
Yeah, and that was where I sat. Yeah. Yeah, so that was what was my attraction, but that was, and I've sort of like had a big chess background, so I think when my sort of like I went from playing chess into martial arts, which was literally one from the other almost overnight. I took a lot of emphasis of strategy and gameplay from that. I guess I've just got that type of way of thinking, but. That said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with what Jack said. He's got his way of doing it. He adds to his tool set differently, and I think largely that's because he come into it a lot earlier than I did. You got to remember, I come back into it. I come into MMA. What is it? Late 1990s. Very very different time period for MMA. But I was older, so yeah. I mean, and Jack's a kid that will look at fighters and be like, "Hey, I want to be able to do a jumping, spinning kick like that," and so on and so forth. So
it was a lot less accessible, mids as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. So Jack's just looking at it with a younger mind perspective, but it's not wrong. It's his path. This is something that I really push on to my students as well. My students are not a carbon copy of me whatsoever. They very very much go on their own path, their own direction of things, just with me as a coach, as a guide, as a guidance sort of thing. Yeah, that's sort of my input on that.
But the thing is, as well, is in the 90s, like, it was not easy for you to see other fighters unless you were fighting on a card, so whether it's in this country or a different country. That was the only real way, or in training, that you were going to be able to see, because like, unless you were getting like UFC VHSs and stuff like that, it wasn't on TV. It wasn't on, there wasn't really Sky and stuff like that. So you weren't going to be able to have access that fighters these days can literally look at any fighter in the world with a couple clicks. And I think, that's helpful at the end of the day, because I think the more information you can take in is always going to be better, isn't it? Regardless of whether the knowledge is power at the end of the day. And I think particularly with sports and with fighting, the more you can learn, the better it is overall. What about now, Jack? Like who would you say, like in terms of influences and stuff like that, have got the biggest influences in, let's say, rather than your career and stuff, let's change it up a bit. Who has got the biggest influence on your fighting style?
I don't know. That's hard. I don't know. That's a hard question. I've never been asked that.
I know, that's why I changed it.
It's hard. There's so many. Honestly, there's so many different guys. I swear, like, I don't know. I feel like I've got a bit of my. I'd like to say I have my own style in a way. But then I don't know. It depends how you look at it. But I feel like my style is just my style. I don't know. I feel like I've just got my own style in a way, but I can mix it up. Really, I don't know. That's a hard question.
The thing is, to all fighters, you develop your own style, don't you? Like, you develop what works for you, what doesn't work. That's always going to be the case. I just wondered if there was someone, whether it be a coach or someone you train with or a fighter, who maybe just, I don't know, just where you pick their brains or where you train with them, have just kind of,
I would say,
particularly stand out, I suppose, would be the thing.
I would have said, it's a hard one. I would have said one of my coaches, Brad, who fought in the UFC. Because I train with him and goes to the same gyms all the time. I would have said him, but it is in a way, but it's not, because I kick a lot more, and I do other stuff that he didn't do, and he done other stuff that I didn't do, I don't do. So I don't know. Yeah. I feel like fighters got their own style in a way, but they just, because you can have a lot of fighting the same techniques. You just add your own little things, or I don't know. You throw it in different. That's a hard question. I'd have to think about it.
Yeah, do you know what? I appreciate how hard that question really is. And so what you got to understand is, Jack's still a very young lad, and his increments of improvement are still going to be pretty large for the next few years. And then as he starts reaching real high level of aspects in each of his ranges, he's not going to get problems until he competes at that level. So say I kind of give a good example of it. It might be you've got a certain type of wrestle style that always gets you down. They might tackle leg on leg attacks, and you always struggle. You always get offset by them, and so suddenly an influence can come along where you've got this long running problem that's slowly showing up in your game as you go up the levels, and people would tackle your leg on leg attacks, have these successes. Then it'll be a coach, or it might even be a sparring partner that just explains something in a certain way and then gives you the answer, and the penny drops, and you have a hurrah moment, a wow moment in your game, where you put something that's been a long-term problem, and sometimes you can't put your finger on it, or they just mention something and you feel like, oh, do you know what? I've been getting taken down with inside leg trip and inside leg to outside leg trip. Oh, yeah, okay, I've got to step out of it. I never knew that. And so, okay, it could be just a principle or a technique that puts that wrong right, but it comes from a particular person, particular influence, and suddenly it can consolidate your game even more, because you don't have that weakness that someone could exploit, and it makes you so much more of an effective fighter all of a sudden. Because I always say to students, you're as strong as your weakest link. So, fight hard to put the wrongs right. And in that, you've got to self-evaluate. And so, I appreciate how hard that question is. It would be kind of easier for me to have answered that, because back, again, the different eras we was in, you had a striking coach, someone who watched your takedowns, and someone who watched your grappling, where, Jack, you now have not only many coaches in different aspects of those ranges, but you also have an MMA coach who tries to gel it all together for you. So as MMAists, we're data collectors from many different individuals, and it's a different sport.
And
for
I
many.
think it's different for you as well, because sorry to interrupt. Sorry. But like, it's different for you, Danny, because you got to think. I started like just solely MMA when I was like 14, 13.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
whereas back in the day, it was a lot of people were coming in as like a boxer or just a wrestler, but they're like already like 24, 25, and then they're trying to transition. It's a lot harder. But whereas because I just started
get that.
with MMA, I learned everything really liking to wrestling.
Oh, we've got a bit of a bad signal going on.
Just breaking up a bit, you are, Jack, mate. If it
We might have lost.
yeah, what you need to do, Jack, if you can still hear me, is go out and then come back in, just to reset the link. That's all. I'll send him a quick message now. I think he heard me though. It might be there's someone tried to phone. Right, you right there, Jack? Can you hear? If you can't hear me, mate, or if you audio's gone funny, go out and then come back in. It's just needs to be reset. That's all.
There we are. Sorry.
No, it's all right. It's one of them things, mate. It's what happens is if someone tries to phone you, it resets the. Right. So yeah, what I was going to say as well is like, I wasn't trying to put you on the spot. I was just genuinely interested in, as a young fighter, if there was someone you'd come across who'd like had like a big influence on you, the way you approach your fights or you fight. I wasn't trying to like put you on a spot or anything like that. But then
that's all. It's all good, mate. It's generally for me. I don't know. I've never been asked that, so I've never thought of it.
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
I mean?
I can get that. So a couple of questions in there.
I don't want to like answer, but like just like chat.
Yeah.
Like I know what I'm on, and in reality, I'm thinking, fuck, I actually don't know. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, that's it. I know I can get that as well. So a couple of questions in the live chat. Reese asked, he's seen some leg kicks recently, which look brutal. And I guess both of you can answer this as well. He says, how do you go about strengthening your shins? Because it looks painful. I mean, you only have to look at Conor McGregor's leg crumpling last weekend to see the damage that leg kicks can do. I'll tell you what we'll do. Right, I'll ask Danny first as the coach. Like, Dan, what do you say to your fighters in terms of whether it's strengthening their legs or protecting their legs? Like, what's the best way to avoid your legs snapping, basically?
Yeah, snapping regards, seeing people attack with their kicks and they're breaking their legs on other people's legs. It's all about understanding knee line. When I'm talking about knee line, I'm talking about the lead leg, which is predominantly the one that's getting attacked. So with knee line, you get people that come from boxing backgrounds and they have their knee line slightly turned in. And so if someone's got a turned in knee and a sort of turned in lead foot, you don't really, unless you've got extremely well conditioned legs, want to attack the inside so much. You would make the obvious choice to attack the outside of the leg. But so say someone's got a centered knee line, which is what you're seeing more and more of in MMA. They can cut the kick, so to speak. So if the kick comes from the outside, you can turn your knee line to the outside to meet the kick, if you will. I think we had a discussion about this when, what was his name? Anderson's, Weidman, that was it. Because how ironic, really, that Weidman
he's been involved in
broke
two of the four.
two out of three that have been in UFC leg breaks. Well, if you remember, I was discussing about knee line then, and what he done was he just come out and he was on the center line. Sorry, he was on like a railway track. If you think of two individual feet, you're stood on a railway line, and if you're right in front of your opponent, you're stood on the same track. And if you kick, the other person can cut that kick, or you're just going to land on the growth plate at the top of that shin where it's thick. And you're kicking with the lower part of your shin, which is effectively almost your ankle as it goes into the ankle. Well, that thicker part of the top leg is going to be stronger than the bottom part of your lower leg.
Yeah.
And if something's going to give, it's going to be your lower leg. So what you should be doing, what Weidman should have done was use a jab to slightly come off. Now, that would mean that his lead foot would be on the center line and his rear foot that he was going to kick with, his rear leg that he was going to kick with, would have been off to the side. So effectively, his opponent's lead leg would then be in the center part of that track. Then he would have wrapped around that centered angle or the knee line that he presented coming forward. It's understanding how to throw those leg kicks, particularly the ones that go on the knee and below, about either trying to set up the knee line, or if they've got a turned in knee line, you can just kick from the get-go and don't have to stick any footwork prep up. That's a lot of the reasons why, but also conditioning is part of the makeup. You've got to build up your bone density, and also take away some of the nerves, which sit, just below the skin. And the way you do that is by impacting it a lot. So if you do any research, say, about astronauts that go out into outer space and they come back down, their bone density, they lose a lot of bone density because they're not under gravity anymore. And then what they do to build that back up, they go on a vibrational plate, and it vibrates the bones, and it makes your body produce bone mass in the bone marrow, and it condenses the leg. So if you think about kicking pads as an example, if you keep kicking pads and you're creating that vibration, you're going to thicken up your bone density. But more than that, it's about clean living. So if you go out partying, heavily, and have big breaks in between your training camps, and your diet goes to pot, this is not going to be good. You're going to get a lot more microfractures in your bones. Your bones have always got microfractures in them. If you was going to look at them, zoomed right in. And if you've not got a clean living life, we could use Conor McGregor. He's a very wealthy man. I'm sure he parties some, and how he's got that kind of wealth.
Yeah.
And he probably gets really out of shape, and probably his diet's not the best. He probably drinks a fair bit when he's away from a training camp, and then he comes back into a training camp. You'll be surprised how this weakens the body. But to get back on the point, because I sort of drift when I'm having my say, I talk too much. What I advise my students is to kick the bag a lot, a reasonably heavy bag, not one that's going to injure you, because you have to build your body up bit by bit. And what I did was I learned something from Japan when I went out there. I went up to a striking camp. It was a tiny little gym. I'm sure I've mentioned this before. And you had these young lads, they're called neo-bloods, and they come in, they've got shaved head, they basically live, and they're supported by the gym. They wouldn't have no parents, or the parents would give the child up to this gym that effectively becomes their parents. This is just the way some of the gyms are out there.
Like a dojo, isn't it?
Yeah. And they have their head shaved, and they come up, and they're massive on respect and everything. So they put this kick bag up, which was really wide, really big. They had a gas heater. The gym's tiny little thing, no more than a dining and living room space. Tiny little gym. They put this gas heater on, and they come up, and these two lads, one kicked one side of the bag, the other kicked the other, and they kicked for 45 minutes on one leg. Just bang, down, get form, bang, bang, 45 minutes. And then they changed their leg and did it. And they just come in for an hour and a half. They wiped themselves down, cleaned themselves up, and they were at the gym. They just come in and did a leg condition day. And so I kind of thought, that could be a real good idea, because I come from a taekwondo background, and I knew what it was all about, to hurt your shins when you kick. And I took this on. I went back and started working a heavy bag, and I did 45 minutes one leg, 45 minutes the other, and I ended up becoming a good kicker. I beat a lot of better strikers than myself through taking their legs out. And trust me, you could have the best hands in the world. If you ain't stopping those leg kicks properly, or you ain't conditioned, you're going to have an awful lot of trouble trying to come in on someone using those hands, because you have to settle your feet to throw your hands, and you have to bed down with your base. Yeah.
Jack, what's it like that first time you take like a full-blown leg kick from someone who's doing a prop, like that first big leg kick? How does that feel for people who've never experienced it? Like, how brutal are they?
Well, yeah, they hurt. They hurt. I remember I had a dead leg for like a week. After my first proper ever leg kick, I was young. I was like 13, 14. My leg kicked. Freaking hell. I remember I was like, oh. Like a poker face in the gym, it hurt. I was like, oh, like, fuck. Like, I thought that hurt. And then I went home. And the day after, I still had a dead leg. I was like, oh, my. I was like, and I went to the gym, and I think I asked my coach, I was like, how do I get used to these? Like, you just keep getting, like, they get conditioned over time. He was like, you're just going to have to man up, really. Just keep getting kicked. He said they'll you'll slowly just get conditioned towards it. I was like, all right, then I have to do it then.
Does it hurt more if you check the kick or if you don't check the kick? I've always wondered that.
Both hurt, and I don't know about you, Danny, but even checking a kick in a fight hurts. Well, I know them more than it hurt me, so it makes me feel better, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
But
Yeah.
like,
It's
taking a cap or a quad kick hurts way more than checking a kick. Definitely. I won't say that. That's if someone says that checking a kick hurts more, they're lying. Just getting taking a full blown cap. That ain't nice.
Well, funny enough, talking about like the brutality of it, leg kicks and stuff. Like last weekend, Sean O'Malley fought Chris Moutinho. Chris Moutinho came in on like 4 or 5 days' notice for his first fight in the UFC. And look, Sean O'Malley put on an absolute clinic. But every time you thought the fight was over, Moutinho would just absorb it, and then he'd hit something, and then he'd look like he might do something. But you know, Sean O'Malley won that fight. It was pretty one-sided. Sean O'Malley's got 2 broken hands, a broken left tibia, a broken right foot, apparently. And he won the fight comfortably. It's I just think that shows how brutal those kicks and punches can be.
You hit like the side of the, like hitting here and stuff. I still remember the first time I ever threw a head kick in my first ever MMA fight. I head kicked the guy right at the start of the second round. I remember I kicked him in the head and I thought, oh, that hurt me more. I think I was in my head, this is what I'm thinking. But in reality, I think, fuck. I was like, shit. I kicked him again with it just to sort of like think, fuck it. Boom. I'm not showing that, but it hurt. I remember like 2-3 days, I had a swollen ass foot. I remember thinking, I don't want to kick anyone in the head again. Like, it hurts. People forget that. Like, even hitting people, you break your hand. Like, if you hit the wrong spot on the forehead in 4-ounce gloves and stuff, it's not hard to break your hand. So I'm not surprised with that, especially that Chris guy. I seen that because I train with Sean when I go to America. I've known Sean before he was even in the UFC. And he hits hard. So I can imagine if you keep hitting someone's forehead like as hard as he hits, there's only so long before your hands give. Like, you're not in big gloves. You're in a pair of 4-ounce gloves. It's not a lot.
It's brutal. And like Reese just pointed out in the comments, Moutinho took like a hell of a beating, had a brutal fight. It was an awesome fight, and then went back to work afterwards. And like he did an 80-hour work week. He's signed with the UFC, I think, now permanently. But like the fighters, the dedication that you got to have to do it and do it full time, and it's just like he made a name for himself, even though he lost.
Dedication. You've got to love it. If you don't love it, you're not gonna want it. Like, you don't play. People forget this. You don't play fighting. You're not playing it. Like, I'm trying to fuck you up. You're fuck me up. You're not playing it. Like, sorry, is it right to swear?
Yeah, no, yeah, you could crack on, mate.
Too late, chap.
Too late now.
You've said it now.
But like,
nah, it's all good, mate.
You're trying to hurt each other. At the end of the day, you're not going in there thinking, oh, let's be mates. Like, it's fuck you. You're probably thinking the same thing. It's like, fuck you. Fuck me too to you. So I'm thinking, like, I'm not going to let you take in everything I've worked for. I've just, like, in a fight camp, anyone that trains like me anyway, or is a proper fighter, you give everything. You don't leave nothing, no stone left untouched. Like, when you train that hard and you put your all into it, you're trying to take that away from me. I'm not thinking, oh, let's be mates. I'm thinking, fuck that. Like, we're not. After, I'll shake your hand, all respect. But you're not my mate. You're trying to take mine. You're trying to, like, and especially at pro now, like, you're getting paid now. You're trying to take money out of my back pocket. Are you mad? Definitely not. Like, you're not playing it. Football, you play. Rugby, you play. You don't play fighting. And people forget that, like, when you're going in there, you're putting your all into it. So for that guy to then go and have to work an 8-hour shift is crazy to me. I'd be thinking.
Yeah. Well, I think. No. He said. I mean, Moutinho said afterwards. He said because they had fight of the night, like that's 75 grand bonus for fight of the night. That changes his life because that'll probably mean that he. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Or that's going to mean that he can pay off his mortgage or whatever, or get a house.
We're flying aboard. Let's go. I'm off.
But he can focus, can't he? Like, if he wasn't training, I don't know what his situation is, but like, if there was any sort of trying to balance work and fighting, that 75 grand is going to go a long way to securing not having to do that, isn't it?
Like, if he's smart, he'll get himself a house. Because once you got a house, you're way better then. You got a roof over your head. That's what I'd be doing if I was him. And then that other money, you just save. Camps, save. Because he would have
That's
got he would have got a pass on top of that too. He would have probably got like 90k. He probably got like
Yeah, he did. He done all right. And I tell you what, mate, everyone is going to want to watch his next fight as well. So
yeah,
it'd be really interesting what they do with him because
fair play. Just needs to like fair play to him because it takes bollocks. You know what I mean? But he needs to learn to move his head. Jesus.
Yeah.
It's on the straightest line. Like his coaches should have said, move your head. Just like relying on a guard. You can't do that in 4-ounce gloves. You can't in boxing gloves. You can like sit and block easy. 4-ounce gloves. You got to move your head. Stop standing on a straight line. If I was his coach, I'd have said, move. Stop standing in front of him.
But it was a strange one because he kept absorbing the shots. He just kept absorbing the shots. But then every now and again, when you'd think like, oh, it's done. And then suddenly he would nail Sean with something.
That's pure toughness, that. Like, that's hot. Sounds anything, that's just hot. Like, he would have been going into that fight knowing he's got nothing to lose. So that was just all hot. Fair, that's why respect to him because it takes a lot, especially after that many punches to the face. Holy
shit. On 4 days' notice as well. Like I got so much respect I have for there's fighters around the world. And there's fighters around the world. We've spoken to fighters who will say, like, I'll fight on whatever day's notice. I'll fight anyone in the world. I'll fight this and fight that. But you really find out who those guys are when they get offered a big name or a big fight on 3 days' notice, 4 days' notice. They're the guys who will back up saying, yeah, I'll fight anyone. Just give me a name.
Yeah,
they're those guys. And you hear about fighters turning down fights after they've said, you know, I'll fight anyone. And then they'll say, oh, no, I can't do it on 2 weeks' notice.
Like, to be fair, the way I look at things like that, I think as long as it's from a standpoint where, like, I wouldn't fight, like, for, I don't know, if the guy was super, super, like, good, like, number 2 in the world, and I got pulled up on 4 days' notice, I'd be thinking, hold on a sec. Like, I want a proper, I wouldn't take a fight like that because I'd be thinking, if I'm taking that fight, that's putting me on title shot. I don't want to take that fight if I'm not ready. Like,
I can understand that.
That's the way I look, and I'll fight anyone, but at that level, I think you got to be smart at the end of the day too, because it is also your career.
100%, mate. Get a rematch written in.
Because at the end of the day, like that Chris guy now is going to have years of his career taken off from that fight, without doubt.
Yeah, you'd think so, just from the amount of headshots he took.
I'll be smart with it. Like, I don't know. Like,
it's brutal, though, isn't it?
I'm a fighter and I'll fight anyone. But I think you also have to know, like, for real, like, I need to know, like, this, I can actually win this. If I'm thinking, and ahhing, thinking, like, I wouldn't personally take it. It's also your health.
Yeah, 100%. No, and I understand that. I think, like, my point is more with guys who are, like, established UFC stars, say, so they're not in danger of being cut, not in danger of, you know, they're secure, and they're giving it, I'll fight anyone. Oh, all right. Leon Edwards' fight has pulled out. Will you fight Leon Edwards on 2 weeks' notice? Oh, no, I can't do that. And that is bullshit to me, because then it's like, it's not like either do it or don't. But it is what it is. Look, at the end of the day, though, like you say, like, that might also be the one shot you get at a top fighter. And if you do take it on a few days' notice, and because you've done that, it doesn't go your way and things, you might never get that opportunity again. So I do get that.
Yeah, definitely. But then again, you can also look at it from the standpoint, if it was like, if you're a professional, you're always in shape anyway. But
yeah.
So, like, say if the fight came on like 3 weeks' notice, then yeah, I would definitely, because if you're a professional, you're in somewhat of a good shape all year round. You should be roughly be able to, like, make weight in like 4 or 5 weeks. Shouldn't, like, if you're a professional anyway. As an amateur, it's different. But as a pro, I think you should always be within 4 to 5 weeks out of a fight. Like, you can go 2 hard rounds, you maybe 3, but do you know what I mean? You should always be able to go 2 rounds regardless, whether you're in if you could be in the worst shape, you feel like you're in the worst shape, you should still be able to go 2 fights as hard as you can all year round without fail. That's the way I look at it personally. So you should always be somewhat in shape. You shouldn't be fat. You shouldn't be like getting too. You should always be somewhat fit. You should still be able to go on the pads and do as many rounds without like being 2 rounds deep and thinking, oh fuck. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't be like that anyway.
So I wanted to ask you a bit. Like obviously you fought on Cage Warriors Academy Southeast for your most recent fight. I wanted to talk to you about the importance of Cage Warriors Academy shows and also the amateur scene generally. Obviously, during COVID, some people might not realize only professional fights have been going on. There's been no amateur fights whatsoever up until recently. Cage Warriors Academies, for the people who don't know in the chat, basically, Danny, you'll be able to explain it better than me, mate. But Cage Warriors is like the main show, isn't it? Is the Cage Warriors Academy shows, are they a mix of professional and amateurs on those shows?
Yeah, academies are designed for the amateurs, and that then becomes the feeder for the pro level on Cage Warriors. And as we know, Cage Warriors are very much becoming a feeder for UFC.
Yeah.
But there are some other good amateur shows. I was at one last night called Battle Arena. Yeah, they put on a lot of events, obviously not recently because of the difficulties with all the COVID, but just yesterday he put on 2 events. He put one on the afternoon, then we had an hour or so's break, and then he put an evening one on. But you get fighters from all over coming onto that show. It's been known that he's done nearly 40 bouts in a day. Putting on, he's gets them up in the 30s. That's a crazy amount of on a fight card. You'd think too many, but he safeguards himself with potential pullouts, for which there was some. We had some opponent changes just a matter of days before. That just happens at amateurs. But that's a well-known show to sort of like build your amateur career, if you will, and to put some foundation down ready for your pro career. It's another really good event.
So, like Jack, we've talked to all sorts of different fighters over the months about the importance of their amateur careers. But like Paddy Pimblett was particularly adamant, wasn't he, about like how important his amateur career was to his success. And when you think how young he went into Cage Warriors, like that shows like what a difference that made. But like for you, he was also like a young guy. Like how important has the amateur scene been to your development, and how much of a difference will the last year with COVID and that, like how much of a difference will that make to fighters around the UK who are looking like on the brink of turning pro and have been sort of building their amateur record up, but they pretty much had to miss a year of fighting? Like, talk to us a bit about the importance of all that.
But fighting as an amateur as a whole is like the reason why I am where I am today. Like stepping up out into the pro game and stuff. Like it's the most important. Like it's the way you can look at it for like people who don't fight. It's your apprenticeship. Like, imagine when you start like your carpenter and you start an apprenticeship. When you're an amateur, you're an apprentice. So you're gonna make mistakes, innit? You're like on your amateur record. If you lose, it matters. Obviously, you're gonna care, but it doesn't matter in the whole grand scheme of things. No one ever goes, "Oh my god, at amateur we lost," because no one cares. It's only a pro record. In reality, if you're gonna go pro, that people care about. So like as an amateur, it's important. You got to fight the best guys. You got to put yourself in fights that you could be thinking, "Oh, like is this too much? Is this too soon? Or am I ready?" These questions you should be having yourself, because you should be putting yourself in them situations. The only way you're going to find out if you're really ready to go pro is by fighting the best amateurs, because that's all you can do. Because when you fight at a top level amateur, like against another top level amateur, that's how like you're already level as pro wise. You're already up there as a high level anyway. Because as a top level amateur, you should be hanging with relatively decent pros. I think personally, anyway, because that's my experience that I've had. Even as an amateur, I was still hanging with pros. So as in a top level, when you're a top level amateur, your level's up there. So to know if you're going to be able to turn pro and really do it, you need to fight other top guys. So as like being amateur is massive. You need to just fight and make mistakes. You should make mistakes. It is what it is. That's how you're going to learn and get better. And then like with COVID and everything, it's been shit, innit? Like that's all you can say.
Yeah.
It's just put fighters like me, even myself. It put my whole life really, because fighting is my life, on hold. Like not being able to fight, because I'm at a stage in my career now where I can't take stupid fights. I have to be smart. Like I'm a professional now. It's not just like you're getting paid for it. It's now my life. Like really, like for real. So like you have to be smart. You can't take some fights. If you like with me anyway, personally with COVID, my gym was shut for ages, so I couldn't train properly. I had no training partners. Like you can't take fights. So it COVID properly slowed a lot of fighters. I'm not probably the only one, but you just work around it. You stay in shape, you find weight, and then once the gyms were back open, it was just now the gyms are open, so I might not have a fight. Let's get better. Use this time the best you can. Just get better, get better. Constantly progress all the time, and that's all you could do, really. That's all I would say to an amateur who's looking to go pro. That's all you can do. Stay focused.
Yeah.
Like you got to stay focused. This is where you'll learn if you really want to be a fighter or not. Because if you really want to be a fighter, you'll come out the other end still doing the same thing. You're dedicated to it or you love it. Like, and at the end of the day, otherwise it's going to slowly, you'll just be like, oh, whatever. Do that.
Yeah.
So that's what
Danny,
I would say to stay focused.
Yeah, definitely, 100%, mate. I love listening to it. I love listening to like everyone's like different takes on stuff and the way they think about stuff. That's one of my favorite things about this podcast is every fighter, every coach, every media member we get on here, they all look at things differently or in their own way. So they've all got a different way. You know, a lot of the times they think quite similarly, but because they've all got different life experiences, everybody will focus or look at things in a different way with a different twist. And I just find it truly fascinating. But what I wanted to just quickly ask you, Danny, is there many, do you get many guys and girls who are maybe like they're amateurs, they train, they go through all their amateur fights, they're really top level, they go through, looks like they're going to turn pro, it's going to be their career, and then they get to a point and maybe they change their minds and they don't go pro, or when they really hit the top level, they just decide that it's not for them. I just wondered what the sort of, I guess, percentages or numbers they would be. Like, obviously, I know, Danny, you train a lot of amateurs and stuff as well. I just wondered if you had an idea of it, really.
Yeah, I've experienced, young lads and, not so much, and young girls. I've had it on both parts there. They voice very, very big plans for their career very, very early on. And they might have a couple of experiences as amateurs. But you kind of get a sense of these different personality types. And, they don't fulfill their promises. They'll be like, and it's always the ones that talk so much are the ones that don't shine through. But, it's disappointing. It's disappointing.
I like classes. I teach kids classes and stuff.
Yeah.
I think like the people that you'll realize who want to actually do it and do it like properly and do what they say is the people who just turn up every day.
Yeah. They just crack on.
It's people who
the
turn
grafters.
up every day. Personally, I'll look at and think he actually wants to because they're there. Like someone who says that they want to be there but isn't showing up, you just you chat shit. Like you. Really
I mean, at the time, and really, well, I've had people that both.
Really.
I've had it where some of the lads that were making these big promises were coming regular for a point, and I've also had it with a couple of young ladies that were barely coming. I'll say, look, you're making these big plans, you've got to try and come regular, and then they get all kind of offended about that. I'm trying to push them to fulfill their dreams. I'm like, look, if you really want this, you've got to come more than once a week, or you've got to stop, training 5 times 1 week, none for 3 weeks, and then 5 1 week. I've had these personality types as well, time again. You just got to try and see through it, and sometimes the best thing is just to stay tight-lipped as a coach as well, and just let let what you know is going to pass through and let it just take its natural route. But I find the ones that are going to achieve are the ones that they make their plans clear that want to have a pro career, but they look at just the fight by fight. Okay, so this is my next opponent at amateur, and they concentrate on that. They don't look too far ahead. They've obviously got a bigger plan, but they're not voicing heavily about, oh yeah, I'm going to want to make it to, I want to be UFC. Because I have had it where some of my lads are turning pro, where it was not my choice for them to go pro by any stretch. They even went through other coaches and other means to get themselves their first pro fight, for which it's making me draft up contracts now, so that when they come into the club, they sign these contracts, and they've got to go through me and my assistant coach Raymond. I think you know Raymond quite well, Raymond Paul. They got to come through us for acceptance on whatever fight that is, at what level. Because I've had trouble with guys having a handful of amateur fights, not even with great amateur records, and then they're talking about going pro, and they train really hard and all that. Don't do everything the way I would like it to be done by any stretch, but they start getting themselves pro fights, and it's just a profanity to me. It's just shocking, utterly disappointing, and it just leaves you shaking your head. But I have been, up until this point, where I'm like getting to a point where I'm thinking, right, I've got to draft up some kind of control and contract here, is I'll let people just take their process, however that might be, and just fall flat on their face. I've had it even with some good level guys that take their career into their own hands and make their own decisions, which is all well and good. I advise against it, and they go on that path, and they've destroyed their careers. They really, really have. I think some of them who might watch this will know who I'm on about. But within my club and within my circle, I don't hold back on it. I just tell them exactly what I think of what they're doing. But I do let it play out. One thing I'm not is their dad. I don't have control over them in a literal sense. But they're not going to make it. I'm so glad. Sorry. I'm so glad, Jack, that you said about how important your amateur career was, because that is, if you look at all the top pros, particularly who come from UK, Wales, Scotland, they've had extensive amateur careers, and largely not always successful ones. Some of them have had incredible amateur careers, but you get some with a good number of losses on it. But towards the latter part, they're racking up those wins in the latter part of their amateur career, and then they start and they become unbeaten for long periods as professionals. And I think you're going down that road. I think you've been really, really well grounded in your development as an amateur, and so I would foresight that you're going to have a successful pro career, because you're obviously getting guidance properly. You've got a good head on your shoulders to understand the process that's needed. So I will just keep pushing my students to look at these podcasts and try to push this process that's important for success through. Yeah.
You got.
Sorry. No, 100%, mate. Go on there, Jack. Go on.
No, I think if anyone like who's not listening to that, like for me personally, like what you just said there, Danny, like I wanted to turn pro before I did, but my coach said no. Like, let's have one or two more. He was like, no, because I wanted to turn pro before, like off the back of the Cage Warriors 8-man tournament I fought in. Like when I won that, I wanted to turn pro off that. He was no. He's like, let's have one or two more. But the thing is, I trust everything. Anything my coach says, I trust. I'm like, he knows. He's not just saying it to say it. Like, any benefit, he's doing it because he thinks that's what's best for me, and he's looking at it from outside. He's looking at another point of view. He's coaching me. I've got to listen to him. Why would I, like, yeah, I might think it's right for me right now, but in reality, he's looking at it and I've got to be smart. If I've got time on my hands, use it. There's no rush. That's exactly what he's like. You got to listen to your coach. Don't, like, if you don't listen to your coach, you're just dumb, really, the way I look at it personally. Your coach is trying to help, not do you wrong. Like a good coach anyway.
Yeah. 100%, and I've the Cage Warriors Grand Prix, which Jack fought in the final and won, didn't you?
I fought in two different tournaments. I fought in the Grand Prix one and then the final of that was on Cage Warriors 100 in Cardiff, and then I'd done an 8-man tournament where it was 3 fights and one in Colchester as well on the academy.
So I've just dropped in in the comment section, I've just dropped in a YouTube video of the one of them. I can't remember which one it was now. It's gone. But if people want to check that out after the show. But last question then, Jack, before we let you go. And a few people asked this earlier on, actually, as well, is what are your plans going forward? And when can the people see you fight next? If you can't give us an exact date and stuff like that, can you give us a bit of a sort of hint, maybe?
So I'll be fighting in October 5th down in on the Cage Warriors Academy. That's the date. There's no opponent yet. We haven't got an opponent. But me personally, my mindset, it doesn't matter who it is anyway. They're still gonna. It doesn't matter. They're getting smoked anyway. And then what was the first question? Sorry.
Just where do you like? What's your aims long term? Is it like UFC champion just to get to the UFC, Bellator? What is it?
UFC world champ. If you're not, if you're doing this, anyone who's in this wants to be the best. Like, that's your goals. And if it's not, you're in the wrong sport. Personally, for me, and I know I'm doing all the right things. I know I'm going to be it one day. Like, I'm putting all the work in, so I'm just gonna let that do the talking, really. But my goals are now just stepping forward, take it fight by fight. I want to go work my way up through the ranks on a Cage Warriors champ. That's going to happen. I know that's going to happen. And just build myself up. Do me, stay in my own lane. And just keep grinding all I can do, really. Just focus on myself, my team, my people, and just keep doing what I'm doing. And then I know I'm going to end up at the top anyway, so just got to keep to the path, keep doing what I'm doing, and I'm going to get there. So that's my plans. I'm going to be a UFC champ one day, and I know I'm doing the right thing, and I know I can be it.
Mate,
so
that's
keep working hard, and I know it's going to happen.
Yeah, do you know what, mate? That's it's an incredible answer, and it's a really mature attitude as well. Like, because you're saying I want to get to the top, and I know I'm going to get there, but also at the same time, it's not going to happen overnight. You've got there's stepping stones in there to doing it.
Process. And I know there's gonna be times where it's gonna be hard, and it's not. If it was easy, everyone would do it. It's not gonna be easy, and I know there's gonna be times where I'm questioning, but it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just got to keep your goals, and focus on what you're doing, and keep driving, and keep pushing. As long as every day you wake up and you take a step to get better than what you're doing. That's all you can do. You just got to dedicate yourself to your craft. That's all you can do. Like everyone does. You wake up every day, you go to work. I wake up every day and I train. And that's it. I make sure I wake up every day and I take another step forward. And if I keep taking these steps, before I know it, I'm going to be there. So that's all you can do, really. Nice.
Can I ask you, right? I can ask you this question, Jack. You don't have to answer it, mate, if you don't want to. It's just something I've literally just thought of. And it's something which I've been interested in over the years about what fighters think, particularly fighters in the UK. So if someone offered you like a crystal ball now and they said, you'll be able to be Bellator world champion, you'll be one of the all-time best Bellator world champions of all time, or you'll be a top-level UFC fighter who's, one of the best but never gets that title, which one would you rather?
I couldn't see either, because I know I'm going to be a world champion. I can't even think of that. I don't know. I won't even think of that. I won't let myself even picture that.
Get carried away, yeah. No, it was just something which come to mind then, as all. Just wondered.
Yeah, for me, I could never even, I just couldn't vision myself doing that. I know.
Yeah,
I know the top's the UFC, and that's my only goal, and that's all I'm aiming for.
That was the right answer, was to not answer that question. Literally, Jack's saying the exact right things. He's got a vision in his mind, and nothing's going to detract from that. So, a clever little trying to trip you up there with that little question, but he hasn't got no other vision other than be champion. I like that.
Just interested, I am, mate. I'm just I'm nosy, mate. That's what it is.
Of any anything like, yeah, you might see scenarios playing out in fights where it doesn't go your way, but in your head, you have to know you're going to come out on top. It doesn't matter what happens. You've got to have a winner's mindset. If you want to be, you have to have you can't have a loser's mentality and think you're going to be a winner. It's just not. It's not how it works. You have to have a winner's mentality, and you can't look at, what if or this. You have to look at, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to do it, and nothing's going to stop me. That's the way I look at it.
Good stuff, mate. Right then, Jack Eglin, it has been an absolute pleasure, mate, to have you on the show, and you are absolutely welcome. Welcome back anytime, mate. Really enjoyed chatting to you, and I know comments in the live chat and that have been good as well. Cheers, buddy.
My man. It's good to talk to you, Danny. It's good to talk to you.
Yeah, good to see you again, Jack. Jack, get down to BST because I know you're quite close with Raymond as well, and we've got a lot of small guys down our way, so it'd be good to come down and spend some time together.
Definitely, mate. I'll be in touch.
No worries, Jack.
100%.
Take it easy, Jack. Speak to you soon, mate. Cheers.
My man. Thank you, boys.
Cheers, guys.
See you weekend and have a good night, all right? Take it easy.
And you, buddy. Take it easy, my friend. Another top-level guest, my friend. Another top-level guest. I love it. We've got a couple of questions for you, mate, as well, which I've saved for now because they're like more sort of coaching stuff and that. And like, I really enjoyed listening to Jack because obviously he's like he's a young guy who's early in his professional career, but he's also quite an experienced fighter as well. And I was really interested in his take on different stuff. And yeah, we've had some great comments such as this. Gaz says this is the best combat sports podcast in Europe. Absolute unbelievable stuff. Great interviews and incredible knowledge. Yeah. I know I do have phenomenal knowledge. It has to be said. And Danny and Jack doing a great job of interviewing me. It's been sensational. So Reese asked, as a coach, do you look at amateurs and you can tell who has got ability straight away, or is it a sport where you cannot see potential until they work hard and buckle down?
Amateurs is normally a good indication at some point that you'll know whether they got what it takes. And what more can you say than that?
Do you think? Go on, just to add to that, I was going to say, do you think say I'm like the most naturally talented fighter you have ever seen, like ever, the best natural ability you've ever seen, but I hate training, I'm late for training, but I do train when I'm supposed to, but I'm late. I'm sort of, sometimes I might be like half-assing it and, like messing about a bit. Like, would that person still be able to make it, do you think?
No, not to today's level. Back in my era, you can get away with things like that because it was still not established in massive numbers across the world. Now it's established in so many countries and it's growing. You're going to get other Eastern Europe countries where MMA is really taking hold in terms of its coaching capabilities, and you're going to see those fighters come through. You're getting fighters from Hungary now, which was never known just a handful of years ago. But you are going to get people push through now.
Interesting. Donna says, has Danny ever trained anyone who stopped without winning a fight ever?
What, gone through a career?
Yeah. She just said, have you ever trained anyone who's never won? Yeah,
there was a guy called Jason Kubiak. I think he was 4-0, 5-0, something along those lines. He did that on the pro level, but he was never having a vision necessarily to be on the biggest show. I think it was at one point, but I'd never hear him talking about it and obsessing about it, where I felt like that was where he was truly going to head to. He had one particular really hard fight that he managed to pull through and get a win. And I think that was like, hey, you know what, this is going to get tough, and decided not to go through with it. But that being said, go back to the answer. Yes, he was unbeaten, but he didn't push it to that level where he was willing to potentially take a loss to progress to get to the higher heights. I think it just got too tough for him. He could vision that he perhaps wasn't going to make it, and perhaps it wasn't for him. And weirdly, after that fight, I kind of knew that would probably be the last time he'd fight. And you just get that sense in people's personalities. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Interesting. There's an interesting comment there. Like Rob Boyle says, I'm not all that knowledgeable with MMA, but I've massively bought into Jack this evening. Seems a top, hard-working lad, and I look forward to keeping an eye on his career and progression. And there's a few comments of similar thing, like people who've really enjoyed listening to him. I was worried that his connection was going to take away from just how like he's got his head screwed on, but he's a really talented lad, a really knowledgeable lad, and I'm glad that the sort of connection flitting a little bit. I think it was because he kept moving about though more than anything.
I think so. Yeah,
he's just like.
And that's you get an indication of his personality just by the way he did that podcast. He's just started to tap into that mature way of thinking. You get that sense, but you still see he's got that childistic, fidgety. He didn't have much understanding of the patience to let someone speak, and then but he would, things like that, and
you want to get in, and you'd say your stuff.
Still. Yeah, very, very useful. But that, this is the speed of his young mind. You talk to him, and he instinctively has the answer to what you're saying, or add to what you're saying, and he's doing it before you can finish your sentence. And it doesn't work like that very well on a podcast. But you get the idea of his tenacity, his hunger, his desire, his passion, and I think he's going to go a long way. He's still got some maturing to do. I think he won't even deny that. But everything that I got from this podcast with him, and taking his age into account, he's making all the right signals to someone that's going to have a great career.
He's got the right sort of people around him as well.
Exactly.
In terms of coaches, trainers, training partners. And the other thing I was going to say, like, I do that a lot with you and with Andy, is when you're talking, I think of something which will add to what you're saying, and I can sometimes jump in, and I hate myself for doing it afterwards. But it's because if we were talking in a room together, I would say it, and it wouldn't seem like I was talking over you. But as you just said, it's because I'm young. Really I went around the houses there just to tell myself I was young. Let's see. There was another question I was trying to find. There was it gone? Reese asked, how do people go about picking a trainer for professionals?
Normally, they don't necessarily pick a trainer as such. They just pick a club, and that might be that they come and have a look around the facility. They might come and have a watch of a class. I think it's very, very rare if you pick someone for their trainer. In my instance, I actually picked it because of the trainer. Said it before in previous podcasts numerous times. Mine was I was a fan of Lee Asdal, and flicking through my magazine, and my girlfriend at the time recognised him and said, "Hey, you know what? He teaches a class just down the road." I'm like, it's a new area I'd moved to. I'm like, you're kidding me. So I did go specifically because it was a trainer. But now there's so many great trainers, so many great clubs. I think initially they go to a club because the club might be well advertised and becoming well known on the MI scene, and that they would pick that specifically. I don't think people pick a club for a particular trainer very often. You might get that as and when England starts producing UFC world champions and then they go into coaching. I think that could then be something to be seen. But I think right now it's just done on successes of clubs. And normally MMA, in terms of being a successful club, is not based on one coach, to be honest. It's numerous coaches that are involved, striking coaches, wrestling coaches, and BJJ coaches, etc., etc.
100%, mate. And we're on a we've been blessed, mate, with some phenomenal guests from British MMA, particularly, like all over the place, from like UFC fighters and Bellator and Cage Warriors and coaches, and that train is not stopping. We've got some cracking names coming up over the next couple of weeks, and that starts next week. We've got the Cage Warriors announcer and MC Huel Chaplin on, which I cannot wait for. He is such a knowledgeable chap, such an interesting guy, really nice guy as well. So I'm looking forward to that, because that again is going to be another twist, another look at the way people look at things, because he's going to look at something, look at things completely different, because obviously he's there and he's in amongst it, but he's not necessarily fighting. So he's going to be a great little insight into everything again. But I've got weeks and weeks and weeks of guests lined up now. I like it. Right, I want to talk about last night's UFC. Very, very. We're going to fly through it a bit, mate, because I've only seen bits and pieces. Because basically, mate, I've been at the beach all day.
I saw the pictures. I saw those knobbly legs of yours.
Yeah, look at my
on that beach.
Mate. Look at my tan. Looking fly. I said to my wife yesterday morning, I walked out in my swimming shorts, and I was like, nearly 40. Looking good. But it didn't last long. So UFC last night. Some really good fights from what I saw.
There was.
I tell you what, mate, right? James Doolin, who we obviously had on the show previously, one of the best coaches and minds in the UK, like yourself and Richard Shaw. You three, for me, are the best in the UK, and in different ways as well, which is another thing I like. But I noticed he puts up on Facebook his predictions.
He does
recently, and I'd noticed the last couple he'd got them really spot on.
He's
so
very
night,
very good at it.
I chucked I had a £5 free bet on Sky Bet, chucked them all into one accumulator, and they all won.
Wow.
So, there we
Amazing.
go. Nice. So was there anything on the prelims which you watched or enjoyed?
No, I didn't watch the prelims on this one. No.
Yeah. So the first fight was Billy Quarantillo versus Gabriel Benitez, with Quarantillo picking up the win, as predicted by James Doolin, with a TKO and strikes. Billy Quarantillo building a bit of a reputation for himself, mate, because if I remember correctly, off the top of my head, he was particularly impressive in his last fight.
Yeah, this guy is super sharp. They both come out opposite stances, and really, when you're opposite stances, you really want to push to establish who's the best striker, and he got the establishment very, very early on, knocking Gabriel down to his bum. But not only that, his wrestling was great. Great wrestling exchanges, and would put Gabriel down onto his back each time, and really become a pattern there. There was only one sticky part where Benitez put Billy down on his back, knocked him over, and it looked like he could turn things around all of a sudden. But no, Billy fought his way back up and got back on top of things. He was just super sharp. It was just like everything was just falling in place for him. Poor Gabriel just couldn't seem to get his foot in. He just wasn't given the space to find his foot in, to find his timing. It just looked like he was utterly uncomfortable in there at all times. And this is purely down to the fact that the Billy was just on point, making good decisions at the right time with the right type of intensity. He was just a better fighter through and through in every range.
And like Benitez is no mug, is he? Benitez, he's a tidy fighter. He's technically
that's
good.
right.
He's nice style to him technically.
He's not weak really in any of the areas, and someone that's impressed in the past. He really has. But Billy is just really showing the signs of being that extra bit of standout. He's showing that he could be the cream in that division. And I think, the next sort of fight that he's going to be offered is going to be someone really that's going to step him up to make voices, to be a contender.
Yeah,
I think that's a real possibility for him.
I think they'll give him a big name next, won't they?
Yeah, I think they will be. Yeah,
but he bloodied Benitez up in the end, and he gave him a bit of a, finish was quite
very good.
Just not brutal. It was just technically very good. He got him down, he held him, and then he finished him. But you don't often see. Like, I was just watching it back then because I only saw the start of this fight. But did he? Because I haven't got the sound on. It was TKO, wasn't it? He didn't choke him out.
Yeah, do you think that choked right in?
Because he had like a rear naked choke on him, and he was hitting him in the face and from behind, and he was bloodied him up big time. But I was just watching it with no sound on.
The refs seen enough of it. I think the doctor looked at his eye, didn't he? His eye was really bad, and just receiving too much damage. And it was beginning to look like, he was never going to find a ways to win this fight. And it was a good stoppage. It was really utterly beaten up. What more can you say about it? It was just great. I'm just really excited to see who they're going to offer him and to watch him fight again, because he's actually really good to watch. He's dangerous on the feet. He's dangerous on the ground. He can really wrestle someone. He's super, super sharp. I'm going to be really curious to see how he does when he's perhaps been having questions put upon his game, and see how he comes up with answers to get back on. Yeah, because we didn't really see him get tested. Like I say, there's only one aspect of that fight where he got put on his bum briefly because they were really trading with opposite stance, and it looked like Gabriel could have started turning things around, but Billy had already kind of taken a lot of the fight out of Gabriel. Gabriel had no real answers for him. So, I'd like to see more questions asked of Billy to see how he deals with those, and I think that next opponent that is going to be offered will be someone right up there that will put some of those questions and see whether he's got the answers for him. I've got a sneaky feeling he will have. Yes.
Another one I was really interested. I was looking forward to this fight. I don't know a lot about Stoltzfus, but I've been really impressed with Rodolfo Vieira from what I've seen of him. So Vieira defeated Dustin Stoltzfus via a rear naked choke submission about 2 minutes into round 3. So it went, a good couple of rounds. What did you make of Vieira's performance?
His striking's really developing. Predominantly sat behind his jab. You did see him kick a little bit. He's a big, solid guy as well. So, to have as fast a jab as he has go to show that he's really been working on his striking at a fundamental level, wasn't overstretching himself, throwing the rear hand too much. So you can see that this is very much a work in process for him. But boy, is it working well for him. He pretty much beat Stoltzfus up with his jab. Really, really incredible performance. Commentary picked up on the fact that he wasn't so confident in himself in between rounds, and that was a little strange because he was having a lot of success. But that Stoltzfus is a real competitor, and even though he was losing those rounds, you see it in his demeanor that he knew he could take this away from Vieira at any time, and was definitely in there as a dangerous foe from start to finish. But Rodolfo's most impressive part, other than the fact that he was landing that jab so well, was his really good positional form. I liked the way he held his hands. I liked the way he moved his head, and I liked his footwork. Just a couple of times he retracted back and put himself on the fence, made a little bit of a footwork decision in his errors, but they were few and far between in a very action-packed fight. Vieira's takedowns as well, really, really good, really, really solid. He's a solid type of grappler as well. And it was great, and the way he took Stoltzfus's back was really, really nice. Is a little bit of a sexy move, jumped up on his back, and then, Dustin had no answers for him there. A really, really good performance, and I love seeing these chokes where they put their palms together like this and pull through, because it's very, very hard to defend for the grappling specialists out there, and also for the ones that not so. When you're holding like this, it's a very, very hard thing to defend, because normally when people go for a rear naked choke and they have an extension to their arm, that arm gets pulled down, you don't have no leverage. But the leverage with the palm grip is with the grip itself, and it's a lot harder to defend against. So great submission. And actually, one of our female fighters, Catlin, she won with exact same style choke against a really, really good grappler, very, very good kickboxing girl. So a fantastic win there.
Yeah, and I think later on this year we'll get some of your amateur guys and girls on as well to have a little chat about the life of an amateur fighter.
Sure.
And really delve into that side of it, because I think it's quite an interesting take, because you don't always see amateur fighters talking about how they look at the sport and how they're learning and things like that. I think it can be an interesting thing. I had Stoltzfus up 2 rounds.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So for for Vieira to win in the 3rd round, I thought was interesting. I thought Vieira did very well. Very, very close. But I did have Stoltzfus slightly up in both the 1st and the 2nd. And then obviously the finish. I didn't. The finish is beautiful, mate. Let's be honest, it's one of those just sensational grappling. It's one of those
Yeah,
moves which turned me from like back, I was more interested in strikes and knockouts and submissions, but
yeah.
you've turned me slowly but surely onto the exciting part of grappling exchanges and things like that. And that finish is like one of those ones where that's it, isn't it? That's where it's just exciting.
Yeah.
And,
Jumping on the back from standing like that, you see so many people.
A lot can go wrong, though, can't it?
Yeah, it can. If you jump it in with two hooks and try to trump two hooks in at once, you got a possibility of missing it and being taken over the head. You've got to put one in and then the other. But to do that is not such an easy thing. You've got to have a good sense of time, a good sense of balance, and be well coordinated, because you're trying to do something with your arms and then something with your legs as well, and trying to do that on somebody that's potentially moving around, trying to defend such setups. But it was done beautifully. No gaps in that transition whatsoever, and it's very, very sure-footed. And to do that quite late in the round when there's a bit of fatigue is very, very impressive.
Yeah, it's so quick. Once he decided he was going to do it, that was it, wasn't it? It was in, and he was up there, and as soon as he got those legs around the back of him.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you thought Stolfus was up, and I think that's largely because Vieira was mainly throwing just a jab, so he wasn't putting big combinations together, whereas Stolfus was trying to put combinations when he was attacking. But for me, Vieira was scoring the clean jab time and time again. He literally got beaten with the jab. But I can see how you would perhaps think that Stolfus was doing something to win, because he was coming in with some really big combinations, but one of the main problems Stolfus had was the fact that he had complete static head position, and he was getting centre line dominated, and it just made it very, very hard for him to make any of those combinations become actually effective in the real world. They were kind of missing with the range, because that centre line was so dominated by Vieira's jab.
100%, mate. I love it. Right, this next fight, I'm really interested on your take on. Jeremy Stephens, been around years, a stalwart in the UFC. He's 35 years old, won many fights by some big name exchanges. Famously, he was the guy. He's had exchanges with Conor McGregor. He's had, he's a name. Hasn't won as much, I don't think, as perhaps people would have expected him to over the years. I think that's fair to say, that he hasn't maybe gone on to do the things that people thought he might in terms of titles and things like that. So he fought, let me get the name right, Mateusz Gamrot, who I think is an exceptional fighter. However, I did see on social media that a lot of people fancied Jeremy Stephens to win this fight. I didn't. I don't know what you felt before it, whether you thought Jeremy Stephens was going to do. We didn't do predictions last week because I forgot. But even in the build-up, Michael Chandler said, he tweeted, Jeremy Stephens by KO or Gamrot will do something on the ground. What did you think of the fight, Jeremy Stephens' performance, and Gamrot?
Yeah, to me, Gamrot's a real proper prospect, and there's few people that I'm true fans of. And when I say a fan, I take extra interest in the way they train, what their style is, and try to forecast what kind of career they have. This guy's a real true potential champion at his weight. When he lost against, I can't think of the name off the top of my head. He fought one of the. Was he from Kyrgyzstan? He fought one of the guys that linked him with Habib. Yeah, he fought he fought one from Habib's camp. And even he said he felt that Gamrot should have won the fight. He should have got the nod. Gamrot kept getting the takedowns on him. I just can't think of his name off the top of my head.
Kutalada, he lost to via decision.
And Kutalada. Yeah. And you know, I think a lot of people were the same thought that I was, that Gamrot, including his opponent that got the victory, he didn't feel that he should deserve the victory, and Gamrot should have got the nod on it. I'm in agreement. For me, in my mind, Mateusz Gamrot is still unbeaten. This guy's a world champion in grappling.
Well, he lost his last fight against Scott Holtzman. He got knocked out, which is
oh really?
Again, that's why I find it so fascinating. Because I think I really rate him. I really think he's a great fighter. But really, like, because that decision went against him, he was coming in with losing his first 2 fights.
Right? Yeah. I forget. Yeah,
but I think if you take out the first one, the decision, you know, anyone can get knocked out. It's how you respond, and to respond like this against Jeremy Stephens, who's
Jeremy Stephens, he's well rounded and he takes the fight to you. You know, he's not a straightforward fighter for anyone. But Gamrot got it down early. He's such a gifted grappler. He got it down there earlier. And one of the big things that I work as a principle in regards to the grappling, if you want to get someone down, keep them down, you want to be away from their legs so they can't regain a form of guard to create scramble ups. And he went round to that north-south, tied up on that arm. And, well, it was a difficult position to defend so early on against a fresh, dry, they weren't even sweaty, so there's no way of slipping out Gamrot. It was such a tight, confident setup in that north-south position for the Kimura attack. Jeremy Stephens, it was no secret for him to know what Gamrot was going to do. He had already made comments that he was an ankle chewer or something along those lines. So he knows he shoots him really low on that single leg and then makes the transitions from there to get the takedown, and very, very quickly goes into fluent grappling attacks. He did what Jeremy Stephens was going to expect him to do, but he couldn't stop it. Just goes to show how proficient he's becoming at it. But yeah, I'm going to stand by. I think Mateusz Gamrot is going to be someone that's going to be a contender within the next 2 years, and possibly the next title holder in that division. I think he's got the capability to do so. He can strike some as well. I think he's still very much a work in process, but he's a good striker as well. But really do love his entries into the grappling. He does his takedowns in a way where he grapples very, very well off that takedown. I like what I see.
Yeah, I've been very impressed with him, mate. I gotta be honest, I really have. Next up was Miesha Tate, who fought Marianne Runway, should I say? And Miesha Tate with the victory via TKO about 1:50 into the third round. I have to say, I thought Miesha Tate was very, very good in this fight.
Yeah, no, she was amazing. It's good to see her back, and not just because she's good to the eye. I mean, she's an attractive lady. Something that gets talked about in our club. Got boys being boys, but no, seriously, great to see her back. She's always been a top ranked fighter. You can tell she's been working on her striking. It was good to see her use her striking confidently and not just be someone hunting for that takedown. But the takedown was there in her arsenal. It did present itself, and she was successful with those takedowns. Marion didn't make it easy though. She had successes with her crosshand several times against Tate. Tate was receiving some strikes and some things to think about and try to overcome to try to get the successes needed to get the win. But she did see through, and I think largely because she's got that striking format, she can compose herself, wait the right time for those takedowns instead of keep pushing and going for the obvious. She was able to disguise her entry through getting some trading going on the striking. She got her entry in, she got it to the ground numerous times. Did lose control a couple of times, but I'll put that down to Marion being, a really good, tough opponent. Didn't make it easy for Tate, but when Tate started to find the kind of answers that were going to lead her to a win, she kept probing there and eventually got her successes in the reward of a stoppage. I think what's nice for Tate is she got to demonstrate new skill sets. She showed that what she had previously is not gone away. In fact, it's still there, as effective as previously. She's just adding to that skill set, and so nice that she could push those successes to a finish as well. Goes to make a real statement to the other girls in that division that Miesha Tate ain't coming back as a little bit fly-by-night thing. It's not going to be a 2-fight thing or a 3-fight thing. She's there to make a run for that title, and I think she could possibly go all the way. Who knows? It would take a few more fights to make a more decisive decision on how serious her contendership for the title in that division is going to be. But right now I'm seeing all the right signs in the fact that she's expanded her skill set and putting it together in unison in that particular match. I just want to see her now up against someone who's going to push her a little bit harder, maybe someone that's going to have successes in certain ranges in the MMA match, and see whether she can make the adaptations with her new complete skills. Because to me now, she's a real complete MMAist in every stretch, and I want to see her having to jiggle it around to try and find the right answers to figure someone out that's putting her under a little bit of pressure too. But they don't push her too fast too soon. I think the temptation for UFC is that, look, she's a big draw, she's a big name.
Yeah.
You could make a feature fight of her.
They're so desperate for female top contenders as well.
And that worries me. I don't want them moving her up too much. She's 34 years old, but she's clearly been living clean. She didn't look out of shape ever whenever you saw her conduct interviews. Saw some interviews that she's done while she's been away from the sport over those 5 years, and she's always looked in shape. I think she's been very, very clean living, and I think that showed itself. 34 years old, some people will argue that that's beginning to get to the latter end of anyone's career, but I think she's got a good 2 years, up to 3 years to be effective. And I think in that time, with the skill sets that she seems to have advanced on, she could make a run for this title. And I think other girls need to sit up and take note and try and figure Miesha Tate out. Yeah, I think they need to try and figure something out if they want to stop her run, because as long as she gets the right fights in the right order, she's going to be a contender very, very quickly.
She got the skills to pay the bills.
Absolutely.
And then the main event was Islam Makhachev, ranked number 9 versus ranked number 14, Thiago Moises. This went as many expected. I think I expected it to go quite deep into the fight, but I also expected Islam Makhachev to eventually grind him down and win it. He won with a rear naked choke in the 2.5 minutes into the 4th round. How did you think this one went?
Again, Islam's been someone that's improved as each fight's going. He's always showed the potential, but he's becoming very, very dominant now. He's looking very good in his striking, very composed. His takedowns are really sure-footed. It was nice to see Moises get some success. He was getting some takedowns on Islam, but Islam was just so good. Any opportunity to get back up and get things reversing, he was doing so. And I really rate Moises. I mean, Moises really is right up there. It really, really is. And for Islam to make Moises look kind of uncomfortable in every area was utterly impressive. Moises really had some successes when he really pushed for the takedown of his own right, and he did get it. Had a couple of spells with a couple of his shots that did finally get through on Islam, but Islam had such good form. None of them were hugely consequential. Would look like they would lead to anything that was going to put Islam in any real true danger. Islam looked like he had pretty much control at all times, even when it wasn't in a wrestling exchange. Kind of surprised me that Moises was choosing to wrestle as much as he did, although I knew it was going to happen at some point. I think he kind of did the right thing. I think maybe to add into the mix, he perhaps should have gone for some bigger flurries against Islam, because Islam was retracting back when needed to, when Moises was really taking it to him. But Moises allowed himself to get pushed back just a little bit too much, or not a little bit too much, I think way too much, to be honest. He was put up against the outer fringes of the cage too often. I think he waited too much. I think I would have liked to have seen him leave everything that he had in those first 2 rounds and then look to maybe survive that 3rd round. But to me, he was getting through those rounds, but still clearly losing them. He was never really showcasing anything to show that he wanted to try and establish any of those previous 2 rounds in a way that he was going to look to win them. I think he really, if he ever thinks of that fighting Islam again, which I think is possibly on the cards because Moises is top tier, he's not going to be out of that top bracket for any time soon. He's very, very good. I think he has to rethink his planning for that fight and come up with a solid strategy. I felt like he wasn't fighting with a strategical mind. He just ended up going into those grappling because I think he was made so uncomfortable in the striking. I think if he wants success against Islam in the future, he's got to string together more flamboyant striking combinations that are going to be making Islam second guess. But if you actually look back at this fight, Islam was feinting and making Moises always second guess. Moises was always a beat behind any decision, any strategical game plan. He just never looked quite comfortable in there. But it wasn't a complete one-sided thing where it looked like Moises was getting destroyed all the way through. It wasn't like that, and largely because Islam conducted himself so maturely throughout those rounds. I think if Islam really pushed, he could perhaps have finished this fight, in those first 2 rounds. He's got the capabilities to do so.
Yes.
But he's a patient man. He's developed into a patient fighter. He certainly was working at all times in any of the ranges, but he did exactly what he needed to do, and that was to guarantee the win, pretty much guarantee it. I think had he rushed to finish it, he probably would have got the finish. But if you're going to rush, someone like Moises can capitalise. If you make a big enough mistake, it will draw him back in. He gave Moises no such chance to get back into the fight and was always left out of sequence and out of timing.
Good shout, mate. Yeah, I was really impressed. Islam Makhachev has been just so impressive over the particularly the last 18 months, 2 years. He's just looked dominant in pretty much every fashion, every fight rather. And this was a good. I enjoyed this, but I agree with you. I do think that this fight at some point will probably happen again. But I guess we'll see, mate. We'll see. But it's certainly going to be fascinating to find out. That's what I will say. So to finish us off, mate, let's go with some predictions for next week's UFC. There's only a couple of fights named at the moment, so we'll just go with those. The ones on the main card. There's 3 fights. You've got Kyler Phillips versus Royleen Piver. Kyler Phillips 9-1. Royleen Piver 20-3. Bantamweight.
Yeah. It's like experience versus up and comer. I'm going to go with experience on this one. I'm going to go with Piver.
Nice, like it. I'll go with Kyler Phillips. Aspen Ladd versus Macy Chiasson in the co-main event for the women's bantamweight bout. That one. Yeah. The records are very similar. I think 9-1 and 8-1. But I think Macy Chiasson's going to do this. I think she's got just a little bit more about her. Interesting, mate. Interesting. I like it. I'm going to go with Aspen Ladd there. I think I like Aspen Ladd. I think she's got potential. I'm just not sure she's ever quite. She's never quite lived up to what I think she can do, if that makes sense. But well, I guess now's the time, mate. I think at the end of the day. And then the main event is Corey Sandhagen versus TJ Dillashaw. Now this will be interesting because TJ Dillashaw, I would imagine, is not going to get the most friendly of comebacks from people.
No.
And rightly so.
We should never presume, but I'd been saying for a couple of years that I think this guy's on something. His performances on the cardio level were just a little out of the ordinary, too often for my liking. He just wasn't having a cardio off day, and we see some great things. Crikey, I'm so terrible at bringing up names. Let's not even go there. I've seen fighters in the past that have shown incredible cardio, and that they're always coming in with a certain cardio set. But even then, when they're pushed really hard, you see in the way that they footwork around, they're regrouping themselves. He never seems to have to regroup himself, and that's just not normal. But let's not harp on something that's so negative. But look, I'm going to go Sandhagen with my heart and my head. Sometimes I pick with my heart on who I want to win rather than who my head tells me that's going to win. But I can utterly say with my heart and my head, I think Sandhagen, this guy's devastating in the division, and he's going to beat Dillashaw all day long. I'm utterly sure of it. He's got the range on him. He's so sharp, and I think he's on the increment of his improvements. I think each time we're seeing him, we're seeing a better version of Sandhagen. Long time out for Dillashaw, and hopefully, well, he shouldn't be on any of that super fuel. So, Sandhagen all day long.
Yeah, it will be interesting because TJ Dillashaw has got something to prove. He upset a lot of people with his conduct, as well as obviously his failed test. So it'll be interesting to see, because look, he is a supremely talented fighter. There's no doubt about that. But it's a big ask, isn't it, to come back and fight someone of Sandhagen's level? Yeah, having been through so much. But
and it makes me wonder. So it makes me wonder. Is this Dillashaw wanting to make a statement really early on, that he's picked such a difficult fight, or is this UFC wanting to have him stamped out before he can
make
even
an example of him?
Make an example of him. I would like to think the latter of the two ideas, but time will tell. One thing I've learned with this sport, you can be utterly surprised time and time again, and Dillashaw, could pull it off. Absolutely could in MMA. As much as there's many ways of winning it, there's likewise the many ways to lose. So, but for my money, Sandhagen, if he gets it on key, which we've seen time and time again in recent fights, he'll nail Dillashaw, and I think he'll be knocking him out in the first 2 rounds.
So I'm going to go with TJ Dillashaw. Partly to have us give us a bit of fun. So me and you go for the opposite, just to make it fun. But I've just got a feeling.
Really?
I just got a feeling, and it's not a feeling I want, because I don't particularly want him to win. But I think he might. Is basically what it comes down to. So we'll see. But when you just sometimes you just got.
I know what you mean.
Just something, and it's just.
There's a worry in the back of my mind that he could pull something off. Hence, I can't help but say, "Hey, look, there's many ways to win. Therefore, there's many ways to lose."
It
does worry me. It does worry me. Yeah. But by no means, I don't want Dillashaw winning. And in all honesty, I think Sandhagen's got all the tool sets to win. Yeah, I think it's in his favour to win. Absolutely.
100%. All right. And I think that is a podcast, my friend. I think a massive thank you to Jack Eglin. Really enjoyed talking to him. Massive thank you to everyone who sent in questions and stuff. I know some people left in there were some questions which didn't get to. It's been a long day, is all I'll say. And we will. I keep sending them, and we will get to them. We got through most. I think there was just a couple towards the end. Thanks to Gaz who sent in the super chat. Thanks to everyone for the lovely comments, and of course Jack. And we'll be back next week with Hugh Chaplin for another episode of the Danny Batten Show, Sunday 8:00. And we got some great guests lined up over the coming weeks, so do join us. But until then, myself and Danny, see you soon.
Yes.
Or at least we would see you soon if I could find the video clip to play us out.
Champion, welcome, Danny